James, you have a new book here. It's called Only She Can Help Us. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Well, I think the title says it all. Only she can help us. Our situation is very dire now.
And that's the second, your subtitle, which is Evil Forces Are Driving the World Towards War.
Which is an astonishing thing to say. How could anyone desire war? Or
I think the bigger question would be almost, how can you say that we're being driven towards war? It doesn't look like war's going on. I mean, there's wars going on in different parts of the world, but we here in North America don't seem to be in any kind of danger of war at the moment. But that's not exactly your contention.
Well, maybe I think that's true what you say. It doesn't seem that way, but it's perhaps because our impressions are formed by what we have from the media, and that is actually very selective, and those things are presented also selectively. So, for
Selective
instance,
meaning they're suppressing some information that if we knew it would give us a very different picture of our world today. Then
exactly. So, for instance, we all heard about the shooting down of the Malaysian plane
there
in
was
July.
The July shooting. There's two Malaysian planes. One was
Okay.
shot down over Ukraine in July, and one was sometime earlier, has never been found over some
Exactly.
ocean or something like that.
Right, and we get a side of the story, and regardless of how plausible that side of the story is, that seems to be the story that sticks.
So you're talking about the shooting down. There's a plane over the Ukraine, and it crashed, and 298 people died in that plane crash.
That's right.
But it wasn't just a plane crash. It was shot down by some military operation.
Exactly. Only a military force could have done that, and that means that some nation's government was involved in this act. So
Because if it was just say a rogue element of that army or air force that did it, then of course the government would have to denounce them and hunt them down and treat them as criminals and put them on trial for shooting down a plane.
exactly.
Like that.
Yeah.
So, but no nation has done that. So obviously, whatever nation was behind the shooting down of this plane did it with the permission or with the order of their government to do so.
That's right. And every government that's involved in some way or other has had their own storyline. So it's the opposite of pursuing some rogue element within their military. Whatever government was behind this is one of these that's purporting to is pointing a finger somewhere else. So the government's clearly involved behind a military action.
So, to summarize what happened on July 17th, 2014, is that an airplane leaving from Amsterdam, I believe it was, and was flying from there to Malaysia, after 2 or 3 hours into the flight, was over Ukraine, over the land of Ukraine, and it was being guided, as is this common practice, that when you enter a country's territory, their control tower controls you, where it tells you where to go, and guides you until you're left that territory to the next territory.
And that's very significant because while it was flying over Ukraine, it was deviated from, it was directed apparently, or I can't say that I guess, but for some reason the plane deviated from the International Aviation Corridor and was taken immediately above the area of conflict in Donetsk. So that's a big question, and the Russian military spokesman raised that question at a press conference just a couple of days after the event. Russia had been maligned, I believe, as being responsible for this whole event, and they presented evidence demonstrating that the YouTube videos posted by the Ukraine government purportedly is evidence that Russia was involved in this, supplying the Eastern militia
people who are ethnic Russians and who have been dissatisfied with the coup that took place in February.
Absolutely.
And they consider themselves defending their homes and their city from an incursion from a foreign power.
Yes. So the contention of many Western nations is that those persons supplied by Russia and instructed by Russia and even on orders by Russia shot down this civilian plane.
So they're saying that these people who are, for example, if not Donetsk, one of the other cities like that, that's fighting against the Ukrainian regime in Kiev, that they're the ones that did it, but how could they possibly do it? And the answer they gave is by the BUK missile. Is that correct? What do we call it? Anti-aircraft system.
Yes, yes. Although the operation of those would require a squadron of soldiers trained in their use, that would be Russian soldiers themselves. These Donetsk civilians basically have no such training. They couldn't have done it. They don't have this equipment. There's really no basis to the contention that these people could have shot down the plane.
And they're the same very people that when the black box was found by them.
Exactly.
And they turned it over.
They immediately turned it over, and it was acknowledged to have been
intact,
not tampered with.
Yes.
Right. So Russia demonstrated very clearly that this, for instance, the YouTube video that was posted as supposedly evidence that here's the BUK system being snuck back into Russia. One of the missiles is missing from this truck. Well, in the background of that video, there's a billboard advertising a car dealership in a region that's been under the control of the Ukraine government since May the 11th. This obviously was not filmed in the place where they purported it to be filmed. And secondly, it was demonstrated that this was downloaded onto the internet the day before the attack took place.
So it was downloaded on the 16th of July.
On July 16th at 7:10 p.m. So
obviously someone then is trying to blame the Russians, and when it comes, and in this case, the evidence they provided actually points the finger at themselves.
It does.
Because here's the Ukrainian government that's taken over since the coup in February 2014,
which had a story already prepared before the event took place,
and even had pictures of the BUK missile system, anti-aircraft system, being transported back. So they claimed back into Russia, whereas it wasn't being transported where they said it was being, but from their own region that they've been in control of all the time. So
yes.
It couldn't have been the Russians being there.
No.
So it had to be their own.
Yes. So not only that, in this Russian press conference, it was demonstrated that the Ukrainian military had deployed a large battery of these BUK missile systems in the Donetsk region the day before the attack, and that it was operating on the day of the attack. And they asked another very pointed question: Why was this so? Who was this being deployed against? The Eastern Ukraine militia has no air force.
So Kiev was fighting against the militia in the eastern part of Ukraine. They brought in a anti-aircraft missile system, the BUK system. It is for shooting down planes or for tracking planes, as the case may be, but it's used against an enemy's air force, basically.
Yes.
But the Kiev government brought this thing in. They own it. They brought it in. They couldn't use it against the militia because they have no airplanes to shoot at in the first place.
Exactly.
So.
And the fact that it's used to track aircraft is very significant, not only for the purposes of guiding these missiles, but also for guiding the operations of jet operations.
So of course, and these so-called separatists or the militia in the east have no air force, and so they have no jets, and so they have no. There's no need for the Kiev militia to bring up, Kiev army to bring up, or whatever force, air force, to bring up these anti-missiles, anti-aircraft systems, because there's nothing to shoot at.
Unless they were using it in coordination with their own military's jets to attack some aircraft. And there was the Malaysian aircraft that got shot down that day.
And well, the second thing is there are witnesses, are there not, on the ground saying that they saw an airplane being up there. I mean,
exactly.
both the Russians' radar picked it up, as well as eyewitnesses on the ground saw it.
That's right. And they were interviewed in the BBC, and that was
BBC,
published.
now here is interesting. You mentioned BBC. BBC and United States are, shall we say, very much allies in all this thing. So BBC itself produced a interview of eyewitnesses on the ground saying they saw an airplane shoot this plane down.
Yes, I think there was a moment of good faith journalism. Someone apparently hadn't got the memo or something about which direction things were to go. So this was published and then immediately withdrawn. But as you say, there are eyewitness reports. This report was saved before it was withdrawn there. So you won't see this on the BBC site, but you can still see this report. And
but that was produced by BBC by
exactly,
somebody putting up on website.
And so eyewitnesses are saying here were these military jets trailing the civilian plane at the time that it was shot down, and the explosions that we heard were from the air. It was not something from the ground to the air. It was an air-to-air assault that shot this thing down.
Well, the other thing about the BUK missile system, and you brought this out in your book, is that the BUK makes a lot of noise when it's shot. When the missile goes from the ground to the air, there's a big explosion that's heard for at least 5 to 7 miles or something like that.
Precisely. And so the entire lack of evidence regarding that.
There's not one person who's come forward to say,
no.
I heard that missile go off that day.
And no journalists in the areas crawling with journalists with their cell phones and cameras. There's not one picture of the persistent condensation trail.
Yeah, which it follows the missile and it's seen for 10 minutes afterwards.
Exactly. It lasts for 10 minutes. It goes to the cloud heights, and if it had been a BUK missile that had shot the plane down, we would have known. That many people would have seen that, photographed it, spoken about it. Yeah. There's no such thing.
So what we have, in fact, we have Russian evidence on their own radar systems. You have, and they've provided it. You have people on the ground who BBC reporter interviewed, and they said we saw it in the air and it was another plane. We have now, according to more evidence come forward, although is that they're saying that there was a squad. There was it was a Su-25. That's the name of a fighter jet that the Ukrainians have. Apparently, has a very quick ascent. And it can fly. They originally claimed it could fly at 14,000 feet, or 14,000 meters, but I'd say more exactly. But that's they said at least in experiments or what is it, in test flights they've done that. But I saw a witness, a pilot once saying, I've been able to fly that at 10,000 feet for half an hour, 10,000 meters with oxygen. So the reason why that's important because now they're changing the specifications of the Su-45 since these allegations have come out. But I see we're running out of time on this program, but there's lots of evidence for saying then first of all, the plane came down. There's no question about that. Secondly, there are bullet holes in the cockpit, and then there's the plane was spread over 20 miles of land, 20 square miles, so that it exploded in the air.
Yes. So there's much more we could talk about it in regard to how it came down, and then ultimately why a government would want to bring it down and what effect it's had.
And we also have the report about the Dutch Safety Board, which has the black box because the Malaysian government gave it to them, and then they don't say anything about it. The United States has satellite pictures of all this, but they're not bringing them forward. So we'll talk about this in another program, James.
Very good. Thank you, Father.